Welcome to Exposing Death Care, a podcast created to shine a light on the hidden, often dark realities within the funeral industry. I'm your host, Em, and each episode we bring you real stories from those who have experienced the best and worst of this hidden world. This podcast is a platform to expose unethical practices, harmful experiences, and shady dealings that have plagued grieving families, funeral staff, and the industry as a whole. By bringing these stories to light, Exposing Death Care aims to push for transparency, support those affected by trauma, and encourage necessary reforms in the way death care operates. By bringing these stories to light, Exposing Death Care aims to push for transparency, support those affected by trauma, and encourage necessary reforms in the way death care operates. From documentaries to dramatizations, what's fact, what's fiction, and what are they still not telling you? Listener discretion is advised. The stories shared in this podcast at times may be anonymous to protect the individuals involved. Thank you for listening, and we hope that by sharing these stories we can work together to improve the death care industry for everyone involved. Exposing Death Care is back, and today's guest is Anna from IDLM, International Doula Life Movement. Anna Adams is the founder and also death doula extraordinaire. Welcome to the podcast, Anna.
Thank you so much, Melissa. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Thanks. How did you first become aware of problems in the funeral industry?
It was really when I started working with clients. Growing up, my family, the oldest is always the one just taking care of all the funeral stuff. Once I got into the role of a doula, that's when I started seeing those problems.
How many years have you been acting as a doula?
About 25 years now.
Okay, that's amazing. You're like an OG, original gangsta. What experiences then have shaped what you're seeing?
Every case that I work with families are different, right? Their needs and what they're looking for and really shapes the different roles of the different things that I see constantly. Constantly. One of the biggest things that I've, really started pushing for and actually educate the hospices that I work with is getting the disposition form done for our state. A lot of times, as you know, when people are coming onto hospice services and things, they're coming so late in the game. So they'll get their advance directive done, but then they forget about the ending, the other part, right? That can turn into funeral stuff into a big, big spiral of a mess.
Do you have any stories that you can share without revealing identities?
I had a client that I was working with. He had been married a few times, and the first wife decided to come out of the picture because, I guess she still loved him, still had her feelings for him, and was trying to take charge. And the client did not have their disposition form done. So then it created a big issue because she was the original wife, first wife who had all the kids. It was difficult for the current wife to fight against it because she had to work with her. They still had the funeral arrangements, plans, and stuff. Their names were done together. So it just made for a spiral of a mess.
Wow. So this is a situation where a couple was married young, they got all their finances and everything done together, they pre-planned, they had children, then got divorced, and a couple marriages later, he dies, and now they're having to resort to the first wife who's got the burial policy and involve her in everything because she paid for it.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Woo!
it was a mess. It was a mess. And you have a lot of stories too. There's so many different things that there's so many working movement parts, right, that need to be done. We can probably sit for days and have like a month's worth of shows with all the things that we've probably seen in this, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Kind of focusing on family and consumer experiences. Reflecting back on your work in death doula care and working with these families that are making funeral plans, somebody was like, "Oh, we can't do this," but in reality, they could have. Upselling, mishandling of remains. Open floor.
Lord, we can have another month of stories there too. The biggest one that though that I have to say that I find is the lack of the having the hidden fees, right?
Mhm,
Another big one is when the person dies, the funeral home doesn't answer and it's 3 o'clock in the morning
mhm.
and you cannot reach anybody for hours.
Where does that happen? Like, you're not getting answering services, or you're just calling to ask questions, or coming to
Oh,
ask you for a
this is
removal?
yeah, asking for removal. Patient dies,
Huh?
and I've actually just recently had that happen with a client. Family
Huh?
chose this service at this funeral home that they wanted to use, and the patient dies, and nurse calls to pick up the body, blah, blah, blah. Nurse calls to the funeral home, we can't reach them,
Wow. Okay.
and it's hours and hours. Now, luckily, this family did not do paperwork and stuff yet with them, so
Mhm.
they ended up going with another service, but I've seen that happen, but there are been times where I've had families who have already prepaid things to a funeral home, and then you cannot reach them overnight. Overnight is the worst time. During the day, I
Okay.
don't really have that problem, but it's over the night, that 2 and 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, where as you know, this is those typical times that a lot of people will die around that time, and then you can't
Yep.
reach the funeral home.
All right. So, as a former funeral director that was in the field, I know exactly what is causing this. And I'm going to give you a great tip. And any other doulas out there that are listening to this, and other funeral directors will probably agree with me unless they're the ones not answering the phone. Here is the tip. In the area that you're serving, I want you to find a mortuary service. The mortuary service is the entity that serves all the funeral homes that don't have their own crematory. So, usually, the smaller guys are contracting with the bigger guy, the mortuary service, who also has refrigeration on sites. That's your backup. The reason your phone call is not getting answered overnight is A, somebody didn't charge their phone. B, somebody is sleeping through the phone call. C,
Mhm.
somebody has their ringer turned off. Or D, they're already on a call and things are going haywire. But if you've called multiple times, it also sounds like this entity is so small that they don't have an answering service, which most funeral homes have an answering service. So, in that case, the backup for having the mortuary service that you can reach out to when the small guy is not answering his phone, then the small guy has to reconcile with the mortuary service because, hey,
Mm.
that's the way it goes. That's what the mortuary service is for. And if the funeral home didn't do their due diligence and answer the telephone, now don't call after one missed call. Give it at least an hour of you not reaching them, because I don't want you to be up all night anyway, but you're going to be there at least an hour anyway when you're waiting for a funeral home. So, because the response time is typically an hour. So if you're having to stay there until they show up or hospice does, give them an hour of not answering the phone, then call in your backup, which is the mortuary service.
Yeah, it's something that, I wish that was we'll have to do some research in our area too, and having that set aside, and that's something too as we're growing the doulas in different states and stuff, to start having like a centralized, knowing who works with who kind of thing.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
I'm finding and hearing more and more stories about not being able to reach people in the middle of the night. And again, like you said, it's those reasons. They're either on another call or they're not hearing the ringing. There is a very well-known facility here locally where I'm at in Texas that is pretty known. It's starting to become known that they do this at night. So I hope they get that corrected.
Here's what I want to say to that. If this is a known issue that's going on, start leaving Google reviews because it'll get fixed. Because the people that are controlling your Google Ads page or your Google business page, they're going to get emails every time a review is posted. That'll get addressed really quickly. Instead of worrying about, dealing with the staff, move it up the chain on the back end. Get your
Mhm.
clients to use Google reviews on these funeral homes because funeral homes are farming five-star reviews. And if people don't know what that is, that's where at the end of the services that they're done with you, they'll send you a follow-up email that'll be like, "How was our service?" Click here and fill it out. If it's a four-star review or less, it reverts back to management. It does not go to Google. If it is a five-star review, it immediately posts to Google and then prompts them to post it on Facebook, Yelp, etc. These programs are designed in the funeral business process to do this to the clients. That's why you see funeral homes with tons of five-star reviews. It's because they are actively pursuing those reviews and keeping the lower reviews out with this software because the people think that they're doing something when they're leaving a review. because a lot of people aren't gonna actively search out to go to Google and be like, "God damn it, these people were fucking terrible to me," unless it's, like, really, really big. So,
Yeah. Yeah. That is starting to become a little bit more of a known problem for like personal care homes or facilities. You know, they're having to hold this room longer hours because the funeral home hasn't gotten the body yet. I've seen times where we've had even 5-hour wait.
yeah, that's unacceptable. Like I said, after that first hour, you need to call your backup in.
I mean, yeah, exactly, and it's like, if it's a
Now you know,
family
I
that's
mean,
waiting, that's different, right? But for the
true.
family to have to be under like, why have they haven't picked up? I had one family that I was working with, and we had them at the care home, and it was literally patient died, I think, around 8 or 9 o'clock, and my gosh, it was almost 4 o'clock before they came to pick up the body, and that was calling them, "Hey, what's the ETA? What's the ETA?" and blah, blah, blah.
No, you're absolutely right. Can you think of any other instances that you've been involved in, maybe where the family was completely disrespected or ignored by the funeral home?
There was a family that I worked with that I had to pull somebody aside and say, "Hey, we're not gonna do this." They were just, really rude, really rude. I think they had too many funerals going on in that all at the same time. There was multiple ones going on at the same time,
Mhm.
and they kinda snapped at somebody for going out of the room, heading down the hall to go to the restroom, and the way it was set up, it was, like, really easy to miss the restroom, and so they're walking and almost going into another funeral area, and they were just really rude. Instead of saying, like, "Hey, how can I help you?" And here we are, we already have people that are grieving who are already emotionally gonna respond differently, it just turned out into a really big argument between the 2 people, the staff and the one of the family members, which, again, people have to remember when we're dealing with the end of life, there is no redo.
I do wanna say something as to what you said about, the interaction at the funeral home that caused you just unnecessary stress, unnecessary outbursts, and things like that over a simple mistake. As somebody that has been in this profession as long as I have and worked in a variety of situations, there is not enough focus on continuing education as well as just getting into this industry on empathy and understanding. Now, the funeral directors, people that have run funerals for a while, they know one show is all you got. This is it. There are no do overs, but it's the staff or the new people I see that come in. And so I'm immediately thinking of a viral TikTok that happened out of Dallas, Texas, where the family was all at the graveside and it was an SCI location. Not that that would matter, but they had the tent and they were bringing in the heavy machinery to close the grave. Well, nobody was backing up from the grave. Instead, they were going up to the grave and pouring in bottles. Did you see this? Where the funeral director, like, waving her
Yeah,
arms, trying to stop them?
and she got
Okay.
really like, she was so rude, yeah.
She was awful. She was horribly rude. However, in the back of her head, under all her stress, all she's thinking of is, "I'm gonna get fired because these people aren't backing up, and here comes the heavy machinery, and it's dangerous, and I've asked everybody to move back." She's worried about her job and herself. Okay, somebody's gonna come back and say, "She's been there forever." Well, then she needed continuing education, period, end of story.
Yeah.
That is something that is not focused on enough. These are these individuals one time to say goodbye. Stop the truck. Don't go
Right,
after
why
the
couldn't you
family.
stop it?
Stop the truck.
Exactly.
Oh, so everybody had 30 minutes of overtime just because we had to wait for a little bit for people to have their final moment and pour one out for their homie or, their loved one in any sense. But that's what I think of. In situations where you're having stuff like that happen, the funeral profession as a whole needs to focus more on grief, education and counseling, empathy, and just understanding, period.
Mhm.
Now, that's going to segue us into um, the death doulas views versus the funeral directors. There seems to be a great divide, and you know what I'm talking about, don't you? So
Mhm.
take it
Yeah.
away.
Yeah, there's the going in, there's one of the things I always tell my doulas, right, as I'm training and what I do for myself is I go and I meet funeral directors, right? They often don't know what doulas do and our role and how we can be a help. Not that we want to take anything away from them. We want to be, I think of it like as being your assistant, right? You get your own personal assistant. And so they could be the ones that actually help you to get through to a family to understand something that maybe they're not getting it. Maybe they're not understanding the way you're telling them as the funeral director, but the doula has already been experiencing it. And then maybe they can word it differently to come in and say something differently. Then guess what? We have a good outcome for everybody. The funeral director and the funeral team's happy and the family's happy. But we have some that will be very rude. And they also don't realize that, yes, we do share tons of different options with our families, but because we educate them, we can actually help your business.
Yeah.
So
So,
if you're going to be ugly to us, then why am I going to help you with your business? Because if you're being ugly to me, you're going to be ugly to my families that I'm working with.
yep. As the rise of death doulas continues, and there's a lot coming on the scene. And part of the training is to establish a relationship with funeral homes. So if these funeral directors, when you're going in there, are being rude, they're shooting themselves in the foot because
Mhm.
you're out there basically marketing before they are because they've got their head in the sand for at needs, immediate stuff that's going on. And you're out there looking for the stuff before it becomes their at need.
Well, it's almost like free marketing for them. Why
Yeah,
wouldn't you wanna work
absolutely.
with a doula? Why wouldn't you work with a doula who's gonna make y'all's job easier as a funeral home? Why not take that help and be like, "Man, that saves me time and manpower for the funeral home costing us less, and you're getting free marketing because if I treat this doula really well and I service their family really well, guess what? I'm gonna be at the top of her list on referrals now."
The industry is so afraid of somebody coming in and doing their job and taking it away from them because they know that it's not that hard. All they have to hold over your head is, "Oh, we're trained to embalm bodies. We're trained to handle dead bodies." As somebody that has worked in this industry, that's exactly what's happening. That's what I've observed. Now, I want to get your thoughts on this.
Mhm.
Indiana death doula Lauren Richwine, Indiana death doula Lauren Richwine recently won a major court victory when the Seventh U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in her favor, affirming that Indiana's attempt to force her to get a costly funeral director license to provide end of life planning and counseling services violated her First Amendment rights. The court's decision allows Richwine to continue her work with her business, Death Done Differently, and set a precedent against states using broad funeral service laws to restrict death doula services. Your thoughts?
One, I'm glad she fought it. I am
Mhm.
glad she did because that sets precedents for other doulas. And being able to share and going through that process, of course, also teaches us as doulas and clarifies. There are a lot of doulas out there that want to do right. We want to be a connection that we can have you to work with our families. And so it was very, very sad that they did that to her. And this is not
Let's
the first
explain what
time
they
too.
did to her real quick. Let's explain
Okay,
what they did
let's
to her.
let's talk
So,
about that.
she was acting as a death doula, which is
Mhm.
completely legal, but the funeral industry, the funeral directors, or the state licensing board went after her. This is a situation that has actually happened to me. My former employer, the last funeral home that I worked for, when we separated employment, I ramped up my social media and began to start planning to do a nonprofit to open a green burial ground. Because of certain wording on my website, he turned me into the state licensing board, and I had to have a talk with them because he was trying to say I was acting as a funeral director without being attached to a funeral home. Despite having a license to practice as a funeral director, I couldn't use certain words or say certain things because then that would look as if I were acting as a funeral director without a funeral home. So all of these laws have been put into place to stop people from being able to challenge funeral directors. And that's exactly what happened there in Indiana.
And it's shameful. It's so shameful. We're gonna start worrying about wording.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
Obviously, that charge didn't go anywhere at all. I had to just have a conversation. I didn't have to go in front of the board, but I did have to change a little bit of the verbiage on my actual website.
but why can't people just, let's think about it this way. Why can't people just go back to old school of why can't we have conversations? Why
Yeah,
can't
instead
we
of
have
ratting people out or whatever it is you think you're doing.
right?
Is that
Why
where we
is
were
it
going with
this?
that?
Yeah, I mean, but like, why do we have to rat people out? Why can't we have normal conversations? Why can't we just say, hey, I think you need to look at your wording because, this kind of leans and it's not clear or whatever the case is that they felt about it. But why do we have to go automatically to the court? To me, that looks like you're just seeking money.
They wanna
I
use
mean,
fear. No, they're using fear and they're threatening you with the loss of money because I don't know her story entirely, but I believe she had an organization step up and help her fund her legal defense.
mhm.
Myself, like, I can't fight these fights, and they know it. But you know what? I'll talk about it.
Well, and it even says like one of the articles that I had read said that it says, and this is a quote, it says, "You should not need to spend thousands of dollars on unrelated funeral licenses just to educate someone on their end of life options." Like, why can't we just help each other?
Exactly.
That's all we're doing. We're
Mhm.
not gonna steal your money away from you, and again, going back to, if you treat us really nicely, we're gonna come in and we're actually gonna help bring more business to you because if you treated us really good, we saw how well you did with our family. Because 'cause I'll be honest, Melissa, I don't like to refer businesses unless I've worked with them.
Yes.
So when I have a family that's maybe working with somebody new, I look at it as a potential of a new partnership of working with somebody until they
Yes.
do my patient wrong, right? And their family wrong. Because when you're starting to make referrals later on, if something goes wrong, well, then you gave them that referral, makes you look bad, all of that. Going back to again, why can't we just work together? Why can't people be nice? Why can't people just, support one another? There's plenty of business. I mean, hello, mortality rate is 100%. So it's not like there's no way they can take the whole thing, right?
Yep. Agreed. Any final stories that stick with you based on stuff we've covered that you've experienced firsthand that you want people to know about?
Research and look at different things. Talk to families, talk to any other people that have used their services before. I really just, the biggest thing is, Melissa, we have to go back to you only get one time to do this right.
Yep. And it
And
definitely needs to be talked about before the person in front of you has stopped breathing.
yes, and to ask a lot of questions. I think this is more of where I want people to be empowered is don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to say, "No, you know what? Give me an itemized cost list of what this is going to entail." Have those discussions now because when your loved one dies, you're going to be distraught and you're just probably going to say, which I think a lot of the funeral industry wants you to do say is just pay the bill and be done with it and not question. So, pre-planning is so important. This is where it makes me sick. I have worked with so many people that, their loved one had a massive heart attack in the middle of the night or a stroke. They get taken off of life support. They die, maybe it takes a few days before they pass away. And what is the family doing at that time? They are out circling and visiting funeral home after funeral home after funeral home. They
Or
can't
they're
observe
just
the
sitting there waiting for the person to die and they're not discussing anything at all.
right, right, and then we're making a rush to hurry up because when they die, if you're in a hospital, you're in a hospice facility or wherever you're at, we need to
They
get the
gotta get
body.
you out of there. They give you a list. They're like, "Pick one."
Yeah, just
They
pick
want the
one.
body out. Yeah.
We have to have these discussions now. We have to be prepared now and ready to move forward. We can't just sit around and wait around or just feel like, "Oh, okay, well, we're just gonna trust." Don't think that you can trust what you're being told. Ask questions.
Yes.
Talk to many people.
Just treat every person it's just like, when you go to buy a car, you treat the salesperson with caution. The funeral director is ultimately a salesperson, whether they are working for themselves or they're working for one of the corporations that pays spiffs and bonuses for embalming, full service funerals, different things like that. Again, you're gonna get more pressure at the corporate places because they do have sales quotas to meet and they do have incentives.
Yeah,
That's been my personal experience.
exactly. Exactly. There's so much to know about.
You mentioned the pricing and the hidden fees. The funeral directors are gonna go, "Oh, no, 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 we outline everything." The funeral or the FCA or whatever it is, the Federal Trade Commission makes us outline everything. Just wait until I show you what I call funeral director math. It's where I've taken multiple general price lists from multiple different places, and I take their packages and I break them apart. So we have the package with all the itemized things, and then we have what each itemized thing costs. Then, if you go through and you go, well, maybe I didn't want this, or maybe I didn't need this upgraded of a thing that was in the package, you end up saving quite a bit of money if you just break the packages up. And I'm going to be including that in the fall semester at IDLM, which leads us to tell the fine folks about International Doula Life Movement.
I'm so excited. We have been around we'll be 5 years old this coming January. We are not like any other program out there. We give you the good, the bad, the ugly. We don't sugarcoat anything. We tell you everything that we have learned in the many, 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 many years. If you actually sit down and take all of our instructors and put all the years of experience that we have together, we bring to the table over 200 years of experience.
That's right.
So, yeah. And the good thing is that we have instructors that are all their niche is so different from everybody. We all have our own little niche of things and what we're really, really good at, and we teach about that. But we don't skim the surface. We take deep dives. We have a team of, funeral directors and RNs and LVNs and social workers and chaplains and doulas who have been doing this line of work before it was actually called doula work,
Yeah.
coming together and educating our students. But not just that, giving you a community that you can turn to. We give our students free grief support. We have death conversations, book clubs, free mentoring to help doulas to start their business, not only just to start their business, to help them succeed and have a sustainable doula practice. We also have continuing education, so, 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 so much, and so excited. Can I give them, can we let out the secret, Melissa?
I think you should.
Well,
Did I say it too easily? Should I say like, no, no, wait, no. Oh yeah, go ahead, pull my arm. Yeah. Go ahead. I almost
no,
said pull my finger.
right? So we're super, super excited, Melissa, to have you coming in and helping and also teaching with us here at IDLM your expertise in bringing forth your experience so that we can also prepare doulas for what they're faced. I remember years ago, work was always made to seem like, oh, it's like rainbows and unicorns. But the truth of the matter of it
Uh-huh.
is that things have changed over time. I always had a history teacher tell me this. You have to know history, right? So you don't repeat it. But that's all well and good from people that are teaching from past experiences. But you have to stay with your feet wet in the ground so that you can also teach what are the new things coming out and the new rules and regulations. And as you know, these rules and these things that we are faced against all the time, we don't understand those things. Our team is so diverse and having such different experience and being in different professions that what happens when we have funeral questions, we call our funeral director instructor. So I'm so excited for you to be a part of that team and to be here with us at IDLM.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You were the third part of my journey in educating myself on becoming a doula and the greatest experience thus far. So thank you very much for inviting me into the family. Tell people how to find you and IDLM, rather, the socials and things like that.
You can find us on Facebook at International Doula Life Movement. You can find us on Instagram at International Doula Life. And we do have TikTok as well. I'm still learning all these darn platforms. Melissa, I'll have to look it up and figure out how to find us.
As long
Just look
as
up IDLM.
you got your handle on there, that's a start. Your students can start mentioning you and you'll grow from there. It is baby steps.
Yeah. So it is there, but we're there.
What are the current classes? You've got a cohort going on right now. When does your next one start?
Yes. So we do have a current cohort going on right now. Our next cohort after that will start in January of 2026. We also have the self pace. So, self pace, you can always go as fast or as slow as you like.
Hmm.
Let's say you start the self paced class today and you're like, Anna, in December, I want to come in and join your live cohort. Okay, you can do that. There's no charge for that. We don't charge you to re-audit the course. We don't take away your portal access. Matter of fact, we update our materials constantly. So you are always getting updated materials. We don't brand ourselves to you. So we're not going to say you have to be IDLM doula. No, you brand yourself to who you are. And we're just very, very happy that a lot of our students appreciate that.
And this is even the self-paced or any of your classes, any classes on this stuff is really good for an individual that's not even looking to make a business out of this, that is genuinely wanting to know how to help people in their community or even in their own family. So I want to thank you so much, Anna, for your time and coming on and sharing the stories that you had in your interactions with the funeral industry. We really
Thank
appreciate you.
you. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you so much. And anything, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Excellent. And as a reminder, folks, thanks for being here. The goal of Exposing Death Care, the podcast, is just to shed light on the broken parts of death care so that families and professionals can push for change and make the worst experience of your life a little less traumatic. Thank you for listening to this episode of Exposing Death Care, the podcast. I truly appreciate your support and the courage of those who have contributed to or shared their stories with us. If you or someone you know has something to share, we encourage you to reach out. You can remain anonymous, and your story could prevent future harm. You can leave comments, ask questions, or provide feedback by connecting with us on social media at Exposing Death Care on TikTok and Instagram, The Modern Mortician on YouTube, and all streaming platforms. Like, follow, and share. Podcast music titled Exit Strategy by Enlia.